Good afternoon. Here we are today, still in February of 2022, on this pandemic roller coaster from the shutdown and the stay in March of 2020, when we were promised if we would do that for a few months, this would soon be over through masking and social distancing, and a promise of another few months, and it should be over. And then the warp speed vaccine development, and yet not yet, and a new administration and higher vaccine rates, and everyone getting boosted. And with each thing, we were promised or told or assured that likely this will be over. And then we were hit with the Delta variant, and now the Omicron variant. And here we are. And we're beginning to feel like with each next thing, the disappointment is just around the corner. Now we're hopeful again with the decreasing restrictions on public masking and vaccine card development, showing our vaccine cards. So here we are. And the challenge for us is that we tasted a kind of universal vulnerability with this COVID situation that we have not as a species even faced on the planet in the last 100 years. So virtually none of us living today has ever been through this level of vulnerability and disorientation. And we're all exhausted. The depression rates are high, the suicide rates are high, people are experiencing post-traumatic stress reactions, domestic violence is on the increase, divorce and family disruption, as we learn as we live with people 24 hours a day that we really can't stand to live with them 24 hours a day. And so the disruptions to our families and the disruptions in our children's education and young people's education. And of course, challenges with drug addiction and relapses as people are taken from their routines and unable to gather to support one another in community, job and career losses and workforce losses. So it's a lot. It's just a lot. And this has been a long trip, and it seems like it's never ending. And so as I thought about that, and as I prepared for today, I thought about that experience that many of us have had as adults, if we have children, and certainly all of us likely have had when we were children, of that infamous question that happens in the car after X number of hours when you're driving from point A to point B, and the kids will ask, "Are we there yet?" And they'll say, "Seems like we should be there by now." And no doubt, in some sense, for our trip with COVID, we're all asking the question, "Are we there yet?" And it seems to each of us like we surely should be there by now. In fact, we might even think of that question, "Are we there yet?" as the universal declaration of impatience. When you're tired of something and you want something else, you just simply ask, "Are we there yet? Can we get to this other side?" It's the natural reflex when we're required to wait, when we're confronted with what the old folks used to say as the meantime. So this COVID trip is a meantime trip. It's a trip in the meantime. And so I want to think about how to deal with the meantime, how to deal with the interim period, how to deal with this question, "Are we there yet?" How to deal with our impatience. So last time I shared with you in the Wellness Collective, I talked about dealing with the anxiety of COVID. And I suggested that we use the strategy that may be best captured by an acronym, END, end anxiety, where I suggested that you engage your feelings, you locate your feelings of anxiety in the body. I know it's counterintuitive to, seems like it would increase your anxiety to focus on where you feel it in your body, but actually that actually helps to calm the vagus nerve. So you're locating the anxiety in your body, you're focusing on it. And then I suggested with the letter N that you negotiate or interrogate or examine or inquire about your anxiety. What is this about? Where is this at? What is it saying? Examine the cognitive content. What am I saying to myself? And beginning to see that our feelings are real, but they're not necessarily true. And so we may feel frightened, but actually not be in danger. We may feel inadequate, but actually not be inadequate to the task in front of us. We may feel excluded, but in fact, people are not attempting to leave us out. So as we inquire, engage, examine our feelings, negotiate with them, we learn what of our feelings are true and what are just feelings. And then we can move to determining action. And so, what I'd like to do today is to take that acronym and apply the middle letter, the N, the interrogate, examine, inquire, to the issue of our impatience with COVID. So, I'd like to examine this "are we there yet" reflex, this impatient reflex. In fact, I'd like to play with this talk as the idea of examining the anatomy of impatience. What does it look like up close? What can we learn from it? What wisdom and strategies for the long haul can we take from our investigation into our impatience around this virus? And so I want to look carefully at the question, are we there yet? Seems like we should be there by now. So working backward, I want to suggest the first thing we see as an element of impatience that traps us and gets us into a set that is difficult for us to negotiate sometimes is we start with a should. It seems like we should be there by now. And that's one of those cognitive traps that I talked about in the last Wellness Collective talk, where should and ought function in a very important way. They are heavy words. And all of a sudden, once we get into we should be here or there, we ought to be there by now, then we're moving from the real to the ideal. We are one place, but ideally we should be someplace else. We're moving from facts on the ground to a view from the air. We're leaving our particular situation and moving to some ideal expectation. We're no longer in the game. We're now on the sidelines. It's much easier to say what ought to be done in the Monday morning quarterback mode than in the Sunday evening quarterback on the field. And so that should perspective, we should be someplace else. The person who can see everyone's hand says he should have played a different hand, but they're looking from the outside. But if you're in the game, you can only play the hand that you're dealt in the best way that you can. So our COVID impatience is built on this ideal of should. We should have gotten through this. We should have known better. We should have done this or that. We should have done this at this point. We should have done that at this point. Even though we'd never been on this road before. It's an unprecedented time in 100 years. So we can't should on a new situation. Yes, COVID is terrible and we want it over, but shoulding on ourselves doesn't help. It's a heavy word that weighs us down. And so when you say, surely we should have been there by now, we need to challenge that statement. And then we ask, are we there yet? So the last sentence, the word of that sentence is the challenge. Yet. Yet is a little word, an innocent word, but it carries a big punch when you're struggling and when you're feeling like you're in a situation that is somehow distressing or threatening to you. Because yet is a signature word of impatience because it robs us of the present moment and the gift of the present. It fractures time. It takes us from now to then. Are we there yet? Part of our attention is now in the future. We should be there by now. We're divided between a now that is uncomfortable and a later that we project to be ideal. So then and there becomes more important than now and here. And then will be better than now. the future is more important than the present. So today becomes a waiting room for tomorrow rather than the living room for today. That push to the future devalues the present moment, makes it feel like there's nothing really that we're doing. There's nothing we can do. Every day seems like the next day. It's Groundhog Day. It's the movie that things just happen the same every day. We don't change out of our jeans or out of our sweats, or it just looks like the same thing. Nothing counts. It's like hitting shots before the game starts. The points don't count. Are we there yet? Puts our life in suspended animation. We're waiting for that next moment. We're waiting for tomorrow. So we can't live fully today. We assume tomorrow will be better. Everything will be fine when we get there. Well, is that really true? Is tomorrow really more valuable than today? Will then really be better than now? We can't really know that. So impatience, it starts with that cognitive trap of shoulds and oughts. We should be there by now. We leave reality and we prefer the ideal over the real. And then we move ourselves out of today into a tomorrow that we imagine. Then we'll be better than now. Are we there yet? And that last thing that impatience does, if we play with that question, are we there yet? Impatience not only takes us out of the moment we're in, it takes us out of the place we're in. Are we there yet? We leave our body in one place and our mind goes to another place. Just as much as yet devalues the present moment, there devalues the present place. I don't want to be here. I want to be there. I don't want to be in the midst of COVID. I want to be there out of COVID. I don't want to be in this current circumstance. I want to be there in that circumstance. So my energies are split. My attention is split. My thinking is split. My focus is divided. And then I start thinking there becomes full of possibilities. When we get there, it'll be great. And here feels like a jail cell. We just can't wait until we get back to our routine, back to work, back to the workplace, back to the restaurants, back to the gym, back to friends, as if those things really were ideal. When in many cases, they actually were not. But the there becomes ideal when it's fueled by our impatience, our refusal to accept where we are now. It becomes ideal to be there when we don't work to see the possibilities of here. And so we lose sight of the value and the opportunity of the here and now when we prefer the there and then. So the challenge for us is to look at this, if you will, anatomy of impatience, the cognitive traps of shoulding on ourselves, the push to be somewhere else, both in time, to be in the future that we imagine to be ideal, and to be in a place that we imagine to be ideal. And impatience pushes us not to notice the subtle distortions in each of those moves. It's hard to shoot on yourself when you're in a new situation. It's not fair to take yourself out of now into a tomorrow that hasn't yet arrived. And it is very disempowering to lose the sense of where you are. and look for another place to be. The challenge for us is to take that anatomy of impatience and actually to disassemble it, to take it apart. So we work not to value the ideal over the real. We work not to value tomorrow over today. And we work to value here and now more than then and there. It requires a shift in our thinking. Thoughts matter, just as the reflexive thoughts of impatience come up. The work for us is to bring other thoughts to mind. We can't help what we think reflexively, but we can add to our thinking mindfully. So COVID may end, but our vulnerability will not end. It looks like this time, dare I say it, with the announcements about easing restrictions, maybe in the decreasing case counts in hospitals and among the population, maybe we have turned the corner and we see our destination ahead of us. But even though COVID may end, our vulnerability will not end. And the real lesson for us is to live in the context of vulnerability. That will not end. That we don't get out of. That we can't shoot away. That will not change tomorrow. That isn't cured by a geographical relocation. Vulnerability is the inherent situation of humanity. And so the work for us is shift our attention from should to is, from ought to are. Rather than we should be doing this, we are doing this. Now, what can we do to make it the best we can? To shift our attention from then to now, from tomorrow to today. To shift our attention from there to here. Impatience is going to pull us naturally out of our place, out of our time, and out of our circumstance. And the work for us is to remind ourselves gently to come back to the reality of our circumstance, not the shoulds of the ideals, but the reality. To come back to the present moment, not the yet, but the now, not the there, then. And to come back to this present place, here, there, here, now. To shift back to a present moment. Because the secret that's well known by all of us reflexively is now is all we have. Tomorrow is actually illusory. Because as soon as tomorrow arrives, what is it? It's today. As soon as the future arrives, it's the present. As soon as we want to get to there becomes here. The work for us is to mine the possibilities and the potential, even in a difficult present, and not give in to the illusion that impatience will take us to a better place. This is the way things are today. We are here now, today, in the midst of COVID, but in the midst of other things of which we know nothing right now, but they will emerge. What can we do to fully live here and now? Mask or no masks? Vaccination verification or not vaccination verification? Social distancing or not social distancing? What can we do to take advantage of all the possibilities of today, even though some of them are limited by circumstances we would rather not have. Because the secret that is well known again is that each tomorrow will bring, when it becomes today, circumstances that are not ideal. That will be the reality, not of the whole situation, but a part of it. So the challenge for us is that COVID need not rob us of the possibilities of being here, now, today, and living as fully as possible given our circumstances. We have the right, we have the privilege to be where our life is right now, in this present moment, which is all we really have. Our life can be found and fully experienced. Here's why this moment is valuable, not because of the characteristics of the moment, not because of this or that thing that's happening in this moment. This moment is valuable because you are here in this moment. Your presence makes this moment valuable. Your presence makes it sacred. Your presence makes it valuable. Your presence makes it holy. WHOLLY. So your presence in this place and at this time, my presence in this place at this time, makes this place worthy of our full attention in order to make the best of it that we can. It is valuable, more valuable than tomorrow, more valuable than there, because we are here. So, because our thoughts matter, when you notice that impatience arising, when you notice the shoulds, when you notice yourself slipping from now to then, from here to there, use that noticing to signal your attention in a different direction. So, as our teachers often say to us, gently redirect yourself from impatience to embrace. I am here now, and I will make this moment valuable and appropriate for me within the constraints of my current reality. I will not should on myself. I will not rob myself of this moment, and I will not rob myself of my place in this moment. I think if we manage to do that, and it's, you know, a tough recipe and it takes time to practice, I think if we manage to do that, then we'll take life on the terms life is given to us and make it as much as we can. And in that, we can be satisfied. So I'd just like to end with just a moment of reflection where we just sit and think for a moment. And you might want to close your eyes or not. Um, and just ask yourself, what are you doing shoulding on yourself? Where are some shoulds around that you might loosen your grip on? Where's that floating around in your mind or in your circumstance? Where are you pushing for tomorrow for the not yet rather than fully being present in now? It may be an uncomfortable now, but the more you are in this discomfort, the more wisdom you get for how to make it different when tomorrow arrives. Where are you moving yourself out of your place? I should be somewhere else. We should be somewhere else. Bring yourself back to here. the things that came to mind, just promise yourself you'll just notice them. Just work on it. Don't shoot on yourself about not shooting on yourself. Just be gentle and aware. And we'll learn to live more fully with our vulnerabilities. And as Howard Thurman once said, once we take fear out of our equation, we can do just about anything within the constraints of reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hopson. What a very powerful message. I think so many of us will, because of your talk today, will pause and really work hard at not shitting on ourselves. I think it's so important. Oh, wow. I'm looking forward to a part 2 of this discussion. But again, I want to thank you so much for this really powerful and insightful word today. Take care.